last session, I guess, or our last study, if that's what you want to call it, we actually covered the introduction to Ecclesiastes. So we know that based on what we read in the introduction, that some think it's King Solomon that wrote it based on some of the scriptures, and we did get into great detail with those scriptures. So we can assume that it's King Solomon. Perhaps it was him. Perhaps it was multiple authors. We really don't know. But just from this first scripture here, Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 1, it reads, "The words of the preacher, the son of David, king of Jerusalem." So we know that Solomon was the son of David. But there's no text to really tell us that he was a preacher. So this is where it gets a little confusing as to who wrote it. But we do know it's the son of David and the king in Jerusalem. Okay, so right here we have a cross reference. So we'll go ahead and click on that. Ecclesiastes 1. And that's going to take us to Ecclesiastes 1:12, 7:27, and 12:8 through 10. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on that to see where that takes us. So Ecclesiastes 1:12, the futility of wisdom. I, the preacher, haven't been king over Israel and Jerusalem. So it's kind of just reaffirming, right? It's just saying it again, pretty much the same thing exactly again. Ecclesiastes 7:27, "Behold, I have discovered this," says the preacher, adding one thing to another to find an explanation. Ecclesiastes 12:8-10, "Vanity of vanity," says the preacher, "all is vanity." Now that's a term that you're going to see a whole lot in the book of Ecclesiastes. You're actually going to see it quite often, and basically, vanities of vanities. It's kind of saying, well, you know what? Better yet, why don't we just look up the definition of vanity, and we can do this together. Okay, excessive pride or an admiration of one's own appearance or achievement. The quality of being worthless or futile. So two different definitions there, but basically excessive pride. And then what he's talking about is the things of the world, right? We know that from the introduction that we read. So the purpose of the preacher, verse 9, chapter 12, "In addition to being a wise man, the preacher also taught the people knowledge, and he pondered, searched out, and arranged many proverbs. The preacher taught to find delightful words and to write words of truth correctly." Okay. So verse 2 reads on, chapter 1, verse 2 reads on. It says, "Vanity of vanities," says the preacher, "vanity of vanities, all is vanity." So there he goes again, vanity of vanities. And again, you're going to hear this word quite often. So we got two references here. Let's click on the first one. And basically, on the footnotes, it's saying futility of futilities as another word for vanities of vanities. And we looked up the word futility last time, but we'll go ahead and look it up again. Just so everyone that's here today that wasn't here last week, pointless or uselessness. So that's another word, right, for vanity of vanities. So pointless or uselessness or futilities, right? Okay, let's check out this cross reference here. And this is 1:2, Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 2. This is going to take us to Psalms 39:5, verse 6 as well, 62:9, chapter 144:4, and Ecclesiastes 12:8, and Romans 8:20. See, and this is what I love about the Bible Gateway website, is you can click just that one line, and it's going to pull up all the cross references for you, and it really just makes things really simple for this study format. So Psalms 39:5-6, "Behold, you have made my days as handbreadths, and my lifetime as nothing in your sight. Surely every man at his best a mere breath. Salah. Every man walks about as a phantom. Surely they make an uproar for nothing. He amasses riches and does not know who will gather them." And this is right along the themes with Ecclesiastes. Not to skip ahead or anything, but this is actually something that he talks about later on, I believe in chapter 2 in Ecclesiastes, how a man works his entire life or toils his entire life only for someone that he doesn't even know to take over his riches or the things that he had gathered over a lifetime. So here it is in Psalms 39:5-6, reaffirming that exact same thing. So we'll go down a little bit to Psalm 62:9. "Men of low degree are only vanity, and men of rank are a lie. In the balances they go up. They are together lighter than breath. So basically, just to kind of summarize what it's saying that the men of low degree are only vanity or futility, right? And men of high rank are a lie. And in the balances they go up. They are together lighter in breath. It's saying that whether you're low rank or high rank, right, or low degree or high degree, they eventually you go to the same place, right? We all have the same fate. We all end up passing away at some point in our lives, regardless of who we are out here in this world. We are all subject to death, right? And then Psalms 144:4, man is like a mere breath. His days are all like a passing shadow. And then of course Ecclesiastes 12:8, vanity of vanity, it says the preacher, all is vanity. And then Romans 8:20, for the creation was subject to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. For the creation was subject to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it. This is a little confusing, right? Because this isn't one of those verses that's self-explanatory. For the creation, and I'm pretty sure when he says creation, they are referring to us as a creation of God. Or in hope, because the creation, okay. For the creation was subject to futility, not willingly, but because of him, right? So we know that capitalized H is telling us that was God, right? Who subjected it in hope. So we are subjected to futility because of God, right? And again, we know futility means pointlessness or uselessness, right? And of course, you can't just take this verse right here and say, okay, well, I guess we're all useless. No, this verse is a bigger part of a bigger story, right? So you don't want to just take one verse and assume that you know where that verse is leading you or what it means. You have to take what was said before, what was said after it. Anytime you read a verse, it's definitely worth it to read the entire chapter to really get understanding, but even more to really get even deeper into that verse, you want to read the references, right? So we'll go ahead and close all these. I think that was the last one, yeah. All right. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Okay, what advantage does man have in all his work? What is he? What advantage does man have in all his work, which he does under the sun? Okay, there's another cross reference there. Ecclesiastes 2:11, 3:9, and 5:16. And of course, we're going off of what advantage does man have in all his work, which he does under the sun. So Ecclesiastes 2:11 reads, thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity, and striving after the wind, and there was no profit under the sun. Now, of course, he's talking about only and I hate to spoil it, but he's talking about only focusing on the work that he does with his hands, right? The labor that he exerted, and he's saying it was all uselessness, it was all futility. He uses the term striving after the wind right here, right? And it says and there was no profit under the sun. No profit under the sun. Basically, he didn't gain anything. He didn't really gain anything in this world, right? Because we just covered on the verses before. We just covered through the cross references and everything. We just talked about how we all end up in the same place, right? You could work hard your whole life and you can miss out on life. You can miss out on maybe time with your children, or if you don't have children, maybe you didn't spend time with your family. Maybe you didn't visit your parents enough. And then when it's all said and done with, you're still going to end up in the same place as the man who had a fulfilled life, that really spent the time with his family and really spent the time really developing those bonds and those relationships, and really got a lot more out of life. The material possessions, there's really nothing in those material possessions. And the sad thing about it is we put more value on the material possessions than we do on the things that really matter. You could buy perhaps somebody gets a new truck, right? New trucks these days cost $40,000 and up. And you see it, a lot of men have these they have this pride in their truck, right? You see they'll put different tires on them, or mud tires or whatever, or lift it up and all these things, and they put so much value on that truck. And that's something that you don't take with you, when you pass away. If you really think about it, the things in life that matter the most are the things in life that are free. And we all heard that the saying, some of the best things in life are free. It really is a true statement. The things that we paid nothing for are the most valuable things in our life. Our children, our parents, the people that love and care about us. Those are the most valuable things in our lives. But when we get conformed to the world, then we really start to value the things, and they really don't matter when it's all said and done with. We have to remember, at the end of it all, it's striving after the wind, and there's no profit under the sun. So why not, instead of focusing on those material possessions, why not really focus on those relationships in our lives and those people that matter, those people that really need us? That's how we really follow what God wants from us, is by serving those around us. Okay, so the next verse is Ecclesiastes 3:9. What profit is there to the worker from that in which he toils? Again, what profit is there from the worker from that in which he toils? You spend your whole life working for a company, or maybe even working for yourself, whatever it may be. And again, you're going to share the same fate as the poor. You could be rich in finances, but you're still going to share the same fate as the man who has nothing. So we have to be mindful of that, and we have to be careful that we don't spend our life valuing the wrong things. Ecclesiastes 5:16 says, there is a great grievous evil, exactly as man is born, thus will he die. So what is the advantage of him who toils for the wind? So again, he toils for the wind, kind of another reference to that striving after the wind, right? Toils for the wind. And in here in a minute, we're going to read exactly what wind is, right? I believe it's in chapter 1, Ecclesiastes. Okay, so that was verse 3. Where verse 4 says, a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Also, the sun rises and the sun sets, and hastening to its place, it rises there again. But the earth remains forever. Also, the sun rises and the sun sets, and hastening to its place, it rises there again. So what does that mean? That means that it's a repetition, right? It's a repetition. In my 36 years, I've seen, I can't even count how many sunrises that I've seen, how many different days that I've seen, and it's all the same thing every day, right? The only difference is the value that I put in those relationships and those encounters that I have with different people. It could be just a simple encounter where you work. It could be customer service. It could be something that you did, something small that you've done to really have a huge impact on somebody's life. And we got to keep that in mind. We were at a church meeting yesterday, and one of the ladies there, her name is Liz, she talked about how somebody came into her workplace looking for a certain building, and she says, I like to take the time to go out there and walk with them and make sure they get to where they're going. I don't want to just give them directions. I don't want to just tell them. I want to show them. And you can imagine the impact that has on these people, to know that there's still people out there that really care and that really want to do the right thing. So definitely tremendous value there. Let's get into these. Let's get into these references here, right? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. So let's see this first reference. Ecclesiastes 1:4. That's going to be Psalms 104:5 and 119:90. All right. So Psalms 104:5. He established the earth upon its foundation so that it will not totter forever and ever. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I do not know what totter means, so we're going to have to look into that. Psalms 119:90, your faithfulness continues throughout all generations. You establish the earth and it stands. So let's take a look at this word right here. Let's see what the reference is to it. Okay, that did not take us there, so let's try this. Or move out of place. Okay, so the word, so it shall not move out of place forever and ever. He established the earth upon its foundations, and it will not move out of place. So the earth isn't going anywhere, right? We're not going anywhere, but the earth remains forever. Pretty much saying the exact same thing, but in different words, right? So let's look at this other reference, lowercase. Lit stands, right? So again, re-emphasizing that the earth is not going anywhere. It's going to stay exactly where it's at. Verse 5, also the sun rises and the sun sets. We'll take a look at this cross-reference here. Psalms 19:6. It's rising from one end of the heavens and its circuit to the other end of them, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. Okay, so it's talking about, we go back here, it's talking about the sun rises and the sun sets, right? So talking about the sun here, it's rising from one end of the heavens and its circuit to the other end of them, and there's nothing hidden from its heat. And I think we can all relate to that, right? Hot summer day in Texas, there's no hiding from that heat. Okay. So verse 5 continuing, also the sun rises and the sun sets. We got another reference here, and it's going to be it's going to take us to Psalms 19:6, which I believe we have already been there. Yep, we have already been there, so we're not going to read that again. And hastening to its place, it rises there again. Again, repetition, and you're going to see this a lot in the book of Ecclesiastes, talking about repetition, vanity of vanities, futilities of futilities, right? Striving after the wind, lit panting. So there's another word reference there, panting, right? So, okay, verse 6 reads, blowing towards the south, and here we go, blowing towards the south, then turning toward the north, the wind continues swirling along on its circular courses, the wind returns. So here's a description of the wind. We talked about striving after the wind, and now we actually have a description of what the Word of God is telling us what wind is, right? Blowing toward the south, then blowing toward the north, the wind continues swirling along on a circular course, the wind returns. And in a circular course, the wind returns. So basically what it's saying about the wind is the wind's just going in circles, right? The wind's going in circles. One of my favorite references to the Bible in general, one of my favorite verses, and this is something that I've talked about in church as well, how the wind going in a circular motion, just basically going in circles back and forth in the same course over and over, right? And then it reads, and on its circular courses the wind returns. So the wind goes and the wind comes over and over and over again. And that's no different in our Christian life, and I've used this reference before. If in your life, in your Christian walk, if you're going through the same negative experiences over and over and over and over, and no matter what you do, you're experiencing the same thing over and over again, then it's time to change your action. Okay, that means you need to do something different. Okay, you have to take action. You have to try something different. A lot of times we're going to go through the same thing over and over again because our actions have been the same over and over again. If we continue to tell a lie over and over again, we're going to continue to experience the same negativity in our life over and over again. And once we make a decision to be honest and be upfront and have integrity, then we're going to start to be seen as a man or woman of integrity, and then things will start to change for our life. Or maybe a relationship, maybe in your relationship with your spouse, or wherever you're at in that relationship, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is. Maybe in that relationship you continue to have the same problems over and over. That's because it's time for somebody's actions to change, And a lot of times in relationships, it's very hard to be the bigger person and say, hey, I'm going to be the first person to change. But really, that's what it takes. You have to be the first person to change. You have to say, enough is enough. I want better for myself and my relationship. And if you have children involved, maybe you want better for your children. You have to be the bigger person to say, enough is enough. I'm going to change my behavior now, and we're going to move forward. And that's sometimes that's what it takes. You want to grow strong bonds and relationships, you have to be the bigger man or woman, right? So now we have an idea of what a description of the wind. Let's take a look at these cross references. First cross reference, going, right? So instead of blowing, right, you could replace that with going as a description of the wind, going towards the south, then turning towards the north. Then the wind continues swirling along in circular courses, the wind returns. And then another cross-reference here, Ecclesiastes 11:5 and John 3:8. Let's take a look at that. Ecclesiastes 11:5. Just as you do not know the path of the wind and how bones are formed in the womb of the pregnant woman, so you do not know the activity of God, who makes all things. And I know everybody's heard that term, the Lord works in mysterious ways, and he really does, doesn't he? How many times have we had a situation in our life when something happens that we just can't explain? I know that happens a lot in my life. I know that happens a lot in some of the things that I'm doing. Sometimes you think you have it figured out, and you think that something's going to happen. You think the timing is right, and you're completely wrong. You're completely off. And then when you start going through hardships because of your lack of understanding, if we can just know and understand that God is in control and appreciate that fact that God is in control, we'll save ourselves from a lot of stress and know that we cannot know the activity of God, right, who makes all things. So let's keep that in mind. Don't take that for granted, that everything's going to be on God's timing. And John 3:8, again, describing the wind. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear the sound of it, but do not know where it comes from and where it is going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. Oh, I love that. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear the sound of it, but do not know where it comes from and where it is going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. When we're born of the Spirit, when we're reborn again, when we give our life to Christ and we invite the Holy Spirit into our hearts, we have no idea where it's taking us sometimes, and that's why you have to have faith to follow God, because without faith you will never know, you'll never be able to trust what God has planned for you. You'll never be able to trust that God has you in the right direction. Very important that we really trust God with all of our heart, and we really put that faith in God. And I know it's very hard because in these days and times, we live in a time of immediate gratification, right? Kids are so used to, and not to pick on kids, because a lot of these adults are getting used to mobile devices as well. But people are so used to having gratification at the click of a button or the touch of a screen, and boom, you're gratified, right? It doesn't work that way with God. God is long-term gratification. When we first give our life to Christ, that immediate gratification when the Spirit hits our heart and just you feel the weight lifted off you, is such a glorious feeling. But it's only the beginning, and that's the biggest mistake that we can make as Christians, is to think that once we give our life to Christ that the battle is over. That is really just the start of the battle. We have got to move forward and strengthen ourselves in God, strengthen ourselves in the foundation and where God wants us to be. So John 3:8, we got that. Okay, so we're going to move on to verse 6, I believe. Okay, we just read verse 6. Okay, now I got one more reference here on verse 6, swirling along. Let's see what that says. Or turning along. So swirling or turning. Verse 7 reads, all the rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers flow, there they flow again. So just as the wind is going in a circular motion, right? So are the rivers. The rivers are just flowing over and over again, right? They're flowing into the sea, they're flowing out of the sea, and they're flowing again, right? It's really a cycle. So let's check out this first reference here, and it's go, another word for flow. And this is probably going to be the exact same thing. Yep, go. And I believe there's going to be one more, that J, go. Yeah, so just basically, you can also replace that word flow with go. All the rivers go into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers go, there they go again. And then verse number 8. All things are wearisome. Man is not able to tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is that which will be. Well, I went off too long. Okay, let's start back at 8. All things are wearisome. Man is not able to tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. So there's got to be I really want to see what the meaning of that is. So let's go right here. Proverbs 27:20, Ecclesiastes 4:8. Sheol and Abaddon are never satisfied, nor are the eyes of man ever satisfied. And Ecclesiastes 4:8. There was a certain man without a dependent, having neither a son nor a brother, yet there was no end to all his labor. Indeed, his eyes were not satisfied with riches, and he never asked. And for whom I am laboring and depriving myself of pleasure. This too is vanity, and is a grievous task. It's vanity when you're constantly striving for riches, right? when you're constantly striving for material possessions, it's a grievous task, right? It's vanity, it's futility, right? It's futility. Why do we struggle and strive for material possessions again when our fate is the same as the poor man? It's gonna we all end up in the dirt. We can't. I can't remember which preacher I was listening to, and he says you never see a U-Haul following a hearse, right? So you can't take the stuff with you is basically what he's saying, and very, very true. And it's a grievous task. It's stressful, right? When you're always focused on money and finances, and that now keep in mind that God does say we should be good stewards. The Word of God says we should be good stewards of our money. I'm not saying to be careless with your money or to not focus on what you have. You still have to take care of yourself. You know, God wants you to take care of yourself, wants you to be responsible, but He doesn't want you to strive for riches to where you're never satisfied, to where you're depriving yourself of pleasure, right? Pleasure of spending time with your family, the pleasure of the time that you spend with your children. God doesn't want to deprive you of that. Okay, He wants you to have the fullness of life. All right, so it says all things are wearisome. Man is not able to tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open my Bible, my study Bible here, and I'm going to go to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, and I really want to read the study portion of it. I want to understand exactly what we're talking about, and more importantly, I want everybody to understand. You know, because I don't know this word. I don't know the word. Really well, right? I know enough of it. I get by, right? And I think that's kind of where everybody's at, right? We don't know the word good enough. You can never know the word good enough, right? So chapter 1, verse 8, as far as the study portion, see note on verse 2. Let's see. So it briefly states the author's theme. This key term is translated vanity or vanities about 22 times in Ecclesiastes and only a few other places in the Old Testament. The Hebrew for it originally meant breathe. The basic thrust of Ecclesiastes is that all of life is meaningless, useless, hollow, futile, and vain if it is not rightly related to God. Isn't that so beautiful? The basic thrust of Ecclesiastes is that all of life is meaningless, useless, hollow, futile, and vain if it is not rightly related to God. Only when based on God and His Word is life worthwhile. That's amazing. That is amazing. And that's why it pays to have these study Bibles, right? Because that really takes you deeper than somebody like ourselves, just normal everyday people. You know, there are men and women who have devoted their lives into studying the Bible, and they basically have their notes here at the bottom, and it's just beautiful sometimes when you can make that reference. So going on to verse 9. That which has been is that which will be, and that which has been done is that which will be done. Let's look at the cross reference here. Ecclesiastes 1:10, 2:12, 3:15, and 6:10. So Ecclesiastes 1:10 reads this way: Is there anything of which one might say, see this, it is new. Already it has existed for ages which were before us. Nothing new under the sun, right? Wisdom excels folly. So I turn to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will man do who will come after the king except what has already been done? What will man do? What will man do who will come after the king except that what has already been done? So there's nothing that you haven't already seen. There's nothing that you're going to go through in life that hasn't already been done. That which has been already, and that which will be has already been. For God seeks what passes by. Ecclesiastes 6:10. Whatever exists has already been named, and what is known, and it is known what man is, for he cannot dispute with him who is stronger than he is. So whatever exists has already been named, and it is known what man is, for he cannot dispute with him who is stronger than he is. All right. So again, just emphasize verse 9. So there's nothing new under the sun. Verse 10 reads on, is there anything of which one might say, see this is new. Already it has existed for ages which were before us. So kind of just re-emphasizing nothing new under the sun. Verse 11, there is no remembrance of earlier things, and also of the latter things which will occur. There will be for them no remembrance among those who will come later still. So let's look at the first reference here. And that's going to take us to Ecclesiastes 2:16, Ecclesiastes 9:5. For there is no lasting remembrance of the wise man as with the fool. Inasmuch as in the coming days all will be forgotten. And how will the wise man and the fool alike die? So again, wise man, fool, just like we talked about earlier, rich man, poor man, wise man, fool, we all die alike. We all go to the same place when it's all said and done with. So why would you spend a lifetime obtaining wisdom and miss out on the important things in life when you're going to end up in the same place as the next man, right? And really, all this can be related back to what we just read in the references, right? Where it says, and I'm going to read it again because I think it's that important. It says only when it's talking about in reference to our life, only when based on God and His Word is life worthwhile. Whatever man takes, it says. Only when based on God and His Word is life worth. Wow, right? Ecclesiastes 9:5 reads, for the living know they will die, but the dead do not know anything, nor have they any longer a reward, for their memory is forgotten. So exact same thing, right? For the living know they will die, but the dead do not know anything, nor have they any longer a reward, for their memory is forgotten. In Ecclesiastes 9:5. Let me go to 9, Ecclesiastes 9:5. Let's look at what the study says. It says, the dead have lost all opportunity in this life for enjoyment and reward from labor. And what is it referring to, the dead? It's referring to those who are dead spiritually, those who don't have God in our lives. All right, the futility of wisdom. So we're about done here, and with the technical difficulties, I did want to get this done as soon as possible. I don't want to hold people up. The futility of wisdom, verse 12. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under heaven. It is a grievous task which God has given to the sons of man to be afflicted with. So this is just kind of reaffirming what we've already studied. And this is why it's so good, and so it helps so much to really study the Bible, okay? To really get in there and study the words, because we're basically learning by repetition now. Repetition is the best way to learn, right? So I, the preacher, let's look at this reference here. And that's going to take us to Ecclesiastes 1:1, 7:27, 12:8-10. 1:1, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. 7:27, behold, I have discovered this, says the preacher, adding one thing to another to find an explanation. Ecclesiastes 12:8-10, vanity of vanities, says the preacher, all is vanity. Purpose of the preacher, in addition to being a wise man, the preacher has also taught the people knowledge, and he pondered, searched out, and arranged many proverbs. The preacher sought to find delightful words and to write the words of truth correctly. And now, kind of going back to the introduction, we know that they were referring to Solomon as a preacher, and as far as we know, Solomon was never referred to as a preacher in the Book of Kings. But it says the preacher. It said, in addition to being a wise man, the preacher also taught the people knowledge, and he pondered, searched out, and arranged many proverbs. We know that Solomon wrote many, many proverbs. The preacher sought to find delightful words and to write words of truth correctly. Maybe that's what I guess certifies Solomon as a preacher, because he taught people knowledge, right? Everything that he learned, all the wisdom that he had, he shared that. So maybe that is why it's referring to Solomon as a preacher. I don't think I read all that. Let's go back. Okay, yeah, we got it all. All right. And then set my mind. That's going to take us to 117, which I believe we're about to read. And I set my mind to know wisdom, know madness and folly, and I realize this is also striving after the wind. So here he's talking about I set my mind to seek and explore wisdom. Striving after the wind, there it goes again, right? And we got another reference here, heart. So another word there for mind would be heart. I set my heart to seek and explore wisdom. And some more cross references here. Ecclesiastes 3:10, 11, 7:25, and 8:17. Let's see what those say. I have seen the task which God has given the sons of man, which to occupy themselves. He has made everything appropriate in his time. He has also set eternity in their heart, yet so that man would not find out the work which God has done from beginning even to the end. And this is really re-emphasizing, right, that God works in mysterious ways, right? And God, everything is on God's timing. And he has also set eternity in our hearts so that man will not find out the work which God has done from beginning to end. And this is what I like about really studying and getting to the word, because we see a full chapter, Ecclesiastes, and there's so many different things being said there. But if we look at it and if we really study and understand, we can really see that there's a basic meaning, a repetition in what is being said, and if we can understand and grasp that basic thing, then we'll be better because of it. Okay, explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under the heaven. It is a grievous task which God has given the sons of man. Another cross-reference here. Let's close these. I don't want to open too much. Evil. So there's another word for grievous. It is a evil task. And then that cross-reference right here for task is going to be re-emphasized in 2:23-26 and 3:10 and 4:8. So 2:23 through 26, I believe, right? Okay, 2:23 and 2:26. Because all his days, his task is painful and grievous. Even at night, his mind does not rest. This too is vanity. How many of us have done that, where we're just constantly worried about work, or even if you're young and you're worried about school, and your mind doesn't get to rest, right? And he says here it's painful and grievous, right? Even at night, his mind does not rest. We have to, if we can get a strong foundation of God, we wouldn't have to worry about so many things, right? And we could really have that real faith in God that God really wants us to have, and that deeper walk, right? There's no coincidence why the title of this Bible study is called A Deeper Walk, right? Because one, we're getting into the Bible, but more importantly, we're taking a deeper walk with God. We're getting to know God on a level that we've never got to know him before, and we're really understanding exactly what God wants from us, and that's why I went with that name. But it's a painful and grievous task. We have to. That the nighttime is specifically made for rest. God wants you to rest. God wants you to wake up in the morning refreshed and ready for your day. 26, Ecclesiastes 2:26 reads, "For to a person who is good in his sight, he has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, while to the sinner he has given the task of gathering and collecting, so that he may give to one who is good in God's sight. This too is vanity and striving after the wind." Again, the term striving after the wind. Ecclesiastes 3:10, "I have seen the task which God has given the sons of man, which to occupy themselves." Ecclesiastes 4:8, "There was a certain man without a dependent, having neither son nor a brother, yet there was no end to all his labor. Indeed, his eyes were not satisfied with riches, and for whom I am laboring and depriving myself of pleasure. This too is vanity, a grievous task." Right? We know also another word for grievous is evil. So this is an evil task, just to continue to work and work and work, strive after the wind. So grievous task which God has given the sons of man to be afflicted with. Now, Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 14, "I have seen all the works which have been done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after the wind." Okay, there's a cross reference here, futility. Again, that word futility, uselessness. And we got some more cross references for verses here. Ecclesiastes 2:11, 17, 4:4, and 6:19. So 2:11 reads, "Thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity and striving after the wind, and there was no profit under the sun." Ecclesiastes 2:17, "So I hated life, for the work which had been done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility and striving after the wind." And I've done that before myself, where I'm going to work and I'm only focused on work and I'm only focused on doing the right things, and I start to put And I start to put the important things aside. I stop spending more time. I stop spending enough time with my children. I stop valuing the relationship with my wife, and I pull away from the things that really matter because I'm so focused on work. And it becomes grievous to me, right? It becomes a burden to me where I'm no longer happy at work. But when I really focus on the people around me, everything falls into place. My personal life is good, my work life is great, and everything just works out great. So it's important that we put God first, right? Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 4. I've seen every labor and every skill which has been done is the result of rivalry between man and his neighbor. This too is vanity and striving after the wind. Ecclesiastes 6:9. What the eye see is better than what the soul desires. This too is futility and a striving after the wind. So just a reoccurring theme is what we're reading here, and really it's just reaffirming, right, over and over and over and over. Some of these verses that are being cross-referenced, were already cross-referenced earlier in chapter 1. So you can really take all of these words and summarize them into basic meanings, and that's basically what we just read a minute ago. Is that a life without God, a life that's not based around God, is a life of futility, a life of uselessness, right? So verse 15, what is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacked cannot be counting, right? You can't count nothing, right? And this is going to take you to Ecclesiastes 7:13. Consider the work of God, for who is able to straighten what he has bent, right? If God made something a certain way, we can't change that, right? Sometimes God's going to do that in our lives, and there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to understand and trust God. And we won't understand and trust God if we're not spending the time to be in prayer, if we're not spending the time to read the Word. The more the Word that we read, the more that we know we have to be aligned with the more we know how to be aligned with what God wants for us, right? And verse 16. I said to myself, behold, I have magnified and increased wisdom more than all who are over Jerusalem before me, and my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. So first cross-reference, spoke with my heart. Oh, that's deep right there, right? I spoke. So he's saying, I said to myself, or he spoke with my heart, behold, I have magnified and increased wisdom more than all who are over me and over Jerusalem before me. My mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. We got a cross-reference for this word here. Kings 3:12, 4:30, 10:23, Ecclesiastes 2:9. Behold, I have done according to your words. Behold, I have given you a wise, discerning heart, so there has been no one like you before you, nor shall one like you arise after you. And this is something that we read in the introduction. This was a really deep. I would really recommend anybody to go to 1 Kings chapter 3, and I believe it starts at verse 10. I'm not sure, but read the whole chapter. Read the entire chapter 3, and it's basically where Solomon is taken over, right? Where Solomon is taken over as king, and he prays to God, and everything that he could have prayed for, he prays for understanding of God's people. And he really comes to God with a humble heart. And we're talking about a young man who has just taken over the biggest empire, right, Jerusalem, and he goes on to become one of the wisest kings, one of the wealthiest kings. And the first thing he asks God for is understanding and direction. And it's really important that we do the same thing. 1 Kings chapter 4 verse 30. Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the sons of the east and all the wisdom of Egypt. 1 Kings chapter 10 verse 23. So King Solomon became greater than all the kings of earth in the riches and in wisdom. Ecclesiastes chapter 2 verse 9. Then I became great and increased more than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also stood by me. So we're going to read this a lot, where he says he increased more than all who preceded him in Jerusalem. And really a great indicator that Solomon is the writer of this book. Okay, before me and my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. And I think this is going to be a reference to the word heart. Yes, heart. Right here. And if I'm moving too fast, I apologize. You guys let me know in the chat if I'm moving too fast for you guys to see this and understand it. And I know you're hearing it, but if you really want to see it, let me know. I can slow down a little bit. Okay, my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. Let's see where this takes us right here. This is going to take us to an abundance. I like that. Let's see, where are we? My mind has observed an abundance of wisdom and knowledge. I love that word. Okay, now verse 17. And I set my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I realized that this also is striving after the wind. Let's see what that first reference is. Ecclesiastes 1:13 and 7:25. And I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under the heaven. It is a grievous task which God has given to the sons of man to be afflicted with. 7:25 reads, I directed my mind to know, to investigate, and to seek wisdom and explanation, and to know the evil of folly and the foolishness of madness. All right. Set my mind, and that T is going to be another reference for heart. I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. Again, madness and folly. Let's see where this takes us. 2:12, 7:25. It's going to take us back to 7:25. 2:12. So I turn to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. I think I already read this. I apologize. All right. And then let me see. Observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. Okay, verse 17 and. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. Striving. Okay, here we are. Madness and folly. I realize this also is striving after the wind. Again, striving after the wind. There it is being said again. And is going to lead that's going to cross-reference us to Ecclesiastes 1:14, 2:11, 2:17, 4:4, 4:6, 16, and 6-9 there. So we're going to read all of this. And most of these, again, we have already read. But we're really going to get an understanding of what this chapter 1 is leading us to, right? I have seen all the works which have been done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after the wind. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 11. Thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity and striving after the wind. There was no profit under the sun. Ecclesiastes 2:17. So I hated life, for the work which had been done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility and striving after the wind. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 4. I have seen that every labor and every skill which is done is the result of rivalry between a man and his neighbor. This too is vanity and striving after the wind. Ecclesiastes 4:6. One handful of rest is better than 2 fistful of labor and striving after the wind. So if one hand's full of rest as opposed to 2 fistful of labor, basically saying one fist of labor, one hand of rest, right? Life is all about balance, right? We got to balance our life. Ecclesiastes 4:16. There is no end to all the people, to all who were before them, and even the ones who will come later will not be happy with him. For this too is vanity and striving after the wind. Ecclesiastes 6:9. What the eye see is better than what the soul desires. This too is futility and striving after the wind. Again, a bunch of verses saying the exact same thing, right? So it's really tying everything together. And last verse 18, because in much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. And this is going to take us to Ecclesiastes 2:23 and 12:12. Because all his days his task is painful and grievous, even at night his mind does not rest. This too is vanity. We just kind of read the exact same thing, right? Where he talks about a handful of rest is better than 2 fistful of labor. But beyond this, Ecclesiastes 12:12. But beyond this, my son, be warned. The writing of many books is endless and excessive. Devotion to books is wearying to the body. So, you know, a lot of what we're taught is to read, right? I know I've heard that before. To read, you want to better yourself to read. But if you're always reading and you're always learning, it's a grievous task, right? What do you really gain when you're always reading and you're always learning, right? Are you gaining a lot? You're gaining some wisdom, but it's wearing to the body. It's going to wear you out, okay? And it's going to take a toll on your body. The constant learning, the constant searching, it's really going to take a toll on your body. And so that pretty much is the chapter 1 of Ecclesiastes. Okay, and what I'm gonna do now is we're just very quickly we're going to read the study portion of Ecclesiastes. And I'm not going to have that on the screen. I'm just going to read it to you guys really quickly. Then this is starting with chapter 1, verse 1. Preacher, the preacher of wisdom. The Hebrew term for preacher, koheleth, is related to that for assembly, possibly meaning leader of the assembly. Also, in Numbers 16:3, perhaps the preacher whose work is described in 12:9 through 10 also held office in assembly. The Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament word for preacher, is Ecclesiastes, from which the most English titles of the book are taken, and from which each English word as ecclesiastical are derived. Son of David suggests Solomon. Though his name occurs nowhere in the book, the Hebrew word for son can refer to a descendant, even many generations removed, or even to someone who follows the footsteps of another. So this is directed right towards Ecclesiastes verse 1 here. So you guys can kind of read that yourself, that verse 1, and know kind of know what I'm talking about. Now moving on to verse 2, you guys can see verse 2 on your screen. Briefly states the author's theme, vanity. This key term is translated vanity of vanity or vanities about 22 times in Ecclesiastes and only a few other places in the Old Testament. And there's some references in the study portion. We're not going to go through that. The Hebrew for it originally meant breath. The basic thrust of Ecclesiastes is that all of life is meaningless, useless, hollow, futile, and vain if it is not rightly related to God. Only when based on God and His Word is life worthwhile. And then, of course, says, see verse 8, whatever man undertakes apart from God. And then verses 1, and this applies from verse 1, 3 through 11, okay? But we're gonna read this real quick and then start again at 3. In this section, the author elaborates his theme that human effort appears to be without benefit or purpose. That's pretty deep. Human effort appears to be without benefit or purpose. Really no true benefit to the work that we do under the sun, right? Verse 1 through 3 again. Jesus expands on his question in Mark 8:36 through 38. Under the sun, another key expression used 29 times, which refers to this present world and the limits of what it offers. Under heaven, though it occurs less frequently, is used synonymously. And then, of course, we're going to move on to verse 1 to verse 4. The earth remains forever. By contrast, man's life is fleeting. And then it skips to a study of verse 8, because some of those we kind of went into detail on those, right? The wind, the description of the wind. Verse 8, all things, everything mentioned in verses 4 through 7. So that verse 8 is just summarizing verses 4 through 7, basically. Verse 10, many things seem to be new simply because the past is easily and quickly forgotten. The old ways reappear in new guises. And this is a reference of chapter 1, verses 12 through 18. Having set forth his theme with all human striving seems futile. The preacher shows that both human endeavor and the pursuit of human wisdom are futile and meaningless. And this is a study on chapter 1, verse 12. The author shifts to the first person, returning to the third person only in conclusion. Verse 13, God, the only Hebrew word the writer uses for God, is Elohim, used almost 30 times, which emphasizes his absolute sovereignty. He does not use the covenant name Yahweh, translated Lord. See note. So verse 114, striving after the wind. A graphic illustration of futility and meaningless. See introduction, purpose, and method. These words are used 9 times in the first half of the discourse. 115. Because of the unalterableness of events, human effort is meaningless and hopeless. We should therefore learn to happily accept things the way they are and to accept our divinely appointed lot in life, as the preacher later counsels. Verse 16, all who are over Jerusalem before me. This does not necessarily exclude Solomon as a preacher. The reference could include kings prior to David, such as Melchizedek and Adonizedek and Abdi Kippah, mentioned in the Armana letters in Egypt. Okay. Verse 18, humanistic wisdom. Wisdom without God leads to grief and sorrow. So it's not saying, the book of Ecclesiastes is not saying that wisdom is bad. It's saying that wisdom without God first will lead to grief and sorrow. And that pretty much summarizes the study portion of of chapter 1 of Ecclesiastes. So again, I apologize for the communication issues we had in the beginning. I think we'll have this figured out, and it should be pretty smooth the next time. I want to thank everyone who attended today. If you know somebody that could benefit from this Bible study, please share it and refer your friends to the Bible study. And we will be sharing these Bible studies every Monday at 7 p.m. We will go through the book of Ecclesiastes, and there is 12 chapters, so this is a 12-week study. And once we're done with the 12-week study, we'll take some votes in the chat, and we'll see where everybody wants to go next. We can study any book of the Bible that you guys want to study. Just let me know. You can also send us a message here on YouTube if you would like to suggest another study. And just want to thank everybody who attended once again. Again, this Bible study is an introduction to Ecclesiastes, a deeper walk, and we are here on behalf of Abundant Grace Church of Plainview, Texas. Again, thank you, and you guys have a blessed week.